Imagine stepping back in time to the golden days of Hollywood. Glimmering marquees, paparazzi flashes lighting up the night sky, and a world hungry for stories of beauty, scandal, and stardom. In that shimmering era, few figures sparkled as brightly as Ava Gardner. She was the kind of star who could stroll into a room, speak a single line, and leave everyone breathless. Her eyes, those famous green eyes, seemed to hold secrets of glamour and heartbreak all at once, while her husky voice carried the sense of a life half-lived in midnight clubs and moonlit soirees. Even in an industry brimming with bright faces and uncontainable ambition, Ava shone with a certain intangible radiance. Yet if you think her story is only about fame and shimmering lights, think again. Ava's life was a tapestry of earthy southern roots, whirlwind romances, dramatic alliances with some of the biggest names in music and film, and an unwavering spirit that saw her forging her own path long after the final credits rolled on her cinematic heyday. It was a life that soared to staggering heights even as it courted danger and heartbreak, and by the end, it was punctuated with a bittersweet sense of having truly lived. Let's take a deeper look at the captivating world of Ava Gardner, where star power, scandal, love, and resilience all came together to create one of Hollywood's most enduring legends. Ava Lavinia Gardner was born on December 24th, 1922, in Brogdon, North Carolina, a rural patch of the South that bore little resemblance to the polished sets she would someday grace. She was the youngest of 7 children, a baby girl whose arrival might have seemed ordinary at the time. Her parents, Mary Elizabeth and Jonas Bailey Gardner, worked as tobacco farmers. Their lives were rooted in the soil and shaped by the changing seasons. The family's warmth and love shielded them, at least for a time, from the harsh realities of poverty. Indeed, even though money was scarce, Ava liked to recall that she felt a sense of closeness and comfort in those days. She was a barefoot child in North Carolina's red clay, relishing the simple pleasures, playing in the fields, walking through farmland, and appreciating the slow pace of small-town life. Yet the shadow of hardship appeared unannounced when her parents lost their property. This forced the Gardners to uproot themselves first to Newport News, Virginia, and later, after Ava's father passed away in 1937, to Rock Ridge, a suburb of Wilson, North Carolina. There, her mother ran a teacher's boarding house, a practical way to keep the family afloat in uncertain times. In Rock Ridge, the teenage Ava attended Rock Ridge High School, blending into the routine of classes, local gossip, and the swirl of small-town life. By all accounts, she was a shy girl, not the loud, confident figure one might imagine. Although she was already blessed with striking features, dark hair and dazzling eyes, she carried herself with a quiet humility. After graduating in 1939, Ava pursued a course at Atlantic Christian College, now Barton College in Wilson, aiming for a stable career as a secretary. Life could have taken a very different route, if not for a single photograph. At age 18, she was visiting her older sister Beatrice, nicknamed Bappy, in New York, where Beatrice's husband, a photographer, took an impromptu portrait of Ava. That portrait ended up displayed in the window of his photography studio, catching the eye of a Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer talent scout. Suddenly, an ordinary Southern girl found herself with an invitation to do a screen test for Louis B. Mayer, the powerful head of MGM. It was a moment that changed her life forever. Signing a 7-year contract at age 19, Ava boarded a train bound for Hollywood, accompanied by her sister. The trip west must have felt like the opening lines of an adventure novel. The waves of farmland eventually gave way to big city sprawl, and then the glitz of MGM's lots and palm-lined boulevards. She arrived to find a film industry bursting at the seams with bright-eyed hopefuls, each longing for stardom. Ava was undeniably beautiful, but she was inexperienced, with a thick southern drawl that casting directors found difficult to parse. The studio arranged for a voice coach to soften her accent. She also got the standard starlet makeover, which included new hairstyling, makeup tutorials, and lessons on how to move with poised confidence. In those early days, she appeared in an array of small roles, often uncredited in B-movies. She might show up for a single line or a quick cameo. Films like Shadow of the Thin Man, 1941, Young Ideas and Swing Fever, both 1943, were stepping stones that introduced her face to the public. Most viewers likely didn't even notice, but Ava was learning how to handle a camera's gaze, how to deliver lines crisply, how to make an impression with minimal screen time. She was patient, diligent, and aware that building a career sometimes means moving in tiny increments. In 1944, she gained her first official credit, playing a small part in Three Men in White, starring Lionel Barrymore. To the casual moviegoer, it might have seemed like any other minor role, but for Ava, it felt like a milestone. There her name was, displayed among the cast, granting a sense of belonging in an industry that had sometimes threatened to swallow her up. Around this time, she also landed a lead role in Whistle Stop, 1946, a film that gave her more lines, more complexity, and more chances to reveal the magnetic persona simmering beneath her beauty. It was a crucial stepping stone. The same year, she was loaned to Universal Studios for a film noir called The Killers, 1946, co-starring the newcomer Burt Lancaster. Some say that was the movie in which Ava truly arrived. As she played the seductive yet elusive femme fatale, her on-screen presence crackled with an intensity that critics and audiences couldn't ignore. She didn't just glow on film, she glimmered in a way that made people think, here is someone special. From that breakthrough, her momentum built. Over the next few years, she dazzled in The Hucksters, 1947, One Touch of Venus, 1948, Showboat, 1951, and The Snows of Kilimanjaro, 1952, opposite Gregory Peck. Each role refined her craft a little bit further. Showboat, in particular, let her step into a musical setting, though her singing voice was famously dubbed, and show a sense of comedic timing and flair. Meanwhile, The Hucksters with Clark Gable and Deborah Kerr let her stand toe-to-toe with established names, proving she wasn't just a pretty face. With every film, Ava ascended in star power. The studios, sensing her box office draw, began promoting her extensively. Photographers clamored for her pictures, capturing that famously symmetrical face and mesmerizing eyes in every angle imaginable. She was often described as a dark, incandescent beauty, an aura that the camera loved and that fans soaked up in glossy magazines. By 1953, she'd earned an Academy Award nomination for her role in Mogambo, again alongside Clark Gable. The story had them shooting in Africa, wrestling with danger and romance. Her performance solidified her status among Hollywood's top-tier actresses. Hot on the heels of that success, she took on The Barefoot Contessa, 1954, co-starring Humphrey Bogart, playing a woman rising from humble origins to glamorous stardom, an echo of Ava's own journey. Critics adored her performance, and she soared even higher in the pantheon of iconic leading ladies. She was no longer just a photogenic newcomer, she was a bankable star, recognized for combining unforced sensuality with a certain emotional vulnerability that audiences found irresistible. The mid to late 1950s saw her in Bhowani Junction, 1956, set during the final days of the British Raj, and On the Beach, 1959, a haunting drama that also featured Gregory Peck. Both showcased different facets of her talent. Bhawani Junction had her playing a half-Indian, half-British woman torn between identities. It was a role full of cultural nuance, and her portrayal had a fierce authenticity that critics applauded. Meanwhile, On the Beach was a grim reflection on nuclear apocalypse, with Ava capturing the poignancy of a woman grasping for happiness in a dying world. By the time she starred in The Night of the Iguana, 1964, directed by John Huston and co-starring Richard Burton, Ava was well into the stage of her career where she commanded respect simply by showing up. Her role as Maxine Falk, the lusty widow running a rundown hotel in Mexico, earned her BAFTA and Golden Globe nominations. Even critics who'd grown tired of typical Hollywood glamour had to concede that Ava Gardner was unstoppable. Yet if the headlines about her film triumphs were big, the ones about her personal life were massive. From the start, she attracted scandal and fascination in equal measure. In 1941, almost as soon as she set foot in Hollywood, she caught the eye of Mickey Rooney, then one of the biggest stars in the business, thanks to the Andy Hardy series. They married in 1942 when she was still a teenager, but the union lasted only 17 months. Rooney's refusal to let go of a wild bachelor lifestyle and the demands of their skyrocketing careers severed the relationship. Rumors flew about young Ava's heartbreak and her fleeting glimpses of marriage's messy side. Yet she pressed on. In 1945, she wed big band leader Artie Shaw. He was older, sophisticated, and notorious for having a string of marriages, 8 in total by his life's end. With Ava, he was apparently controlling, critical of her relatively limited education, and occasionally abusive. They divorced a year later. It was a pattern that foreshadowed her intense love life, big personalities, passionate romances, and stormy ends. Then came Frank Sinatra, arguably the love of her life and the partner in her most storied and tumultuous marriage, which lasted from 1951 to 1957. Their union was scandalous from the start. Sinatra was still married to his first wife, Nancy, when he embarked on a heated affair with Ava. The tabloids crucified Ava for stealing the crooner. Public moralists gasped at the brazen nature of their romance, but the two pressed on, marrying just 72 hours after Sinatra finalized his divorce. At the time, his career was hitting a slump, while hers was rocketing upward. Ironically, it was Ava's pull in Hollywood that helped Sinatra nab the part of Maggio in From Here to Eternity, 1953, a role that resurrected his career and won him an Oscar. But the same dynamic that brought them together became their undoing. Sinatra's raging jealousy, combined with Ava's heavy drinking, turned their household into a battlefield of shattered glasses and slammed doors. They separated in 1954, with the divorce finalizing years later, but they never fully let go of each other. Both insisted to their dying days that the other was their true love, and they maintained a friendship across the decades. For many fans, the Ava Sinatra love story was the ultimate symbol of Hollywood romance. Beautiful, explosive, and forever incomplete. Disillusioned by the paparazzi culture of Los Angeles and burdened by so many heartbreaks, Ava left Hollywood behind in 1958 for Spain. There, among bullfights and bohemian nights, she embraced a more liberated lifestyle. She became close to writer Ernest Hemingway, who had also lived in Spain, and he introduced her to the world of matadors. She wound up dating one of the most famous bullfighters of the era, Luis Miguel Dominguín, igniting yet another tempest of gossip. Her decade in Spain was marked by parties, love affairs, and a sense of flamboyant freedom that she had rarely experienced in the States. Surrounded by flamenco music, tapas bars, and the adrenaline of the corrida, Ava seemed to find a raw, unfiltered joy, though she still wrestled with the emptiness left behind by her heartbreaks and lingering controversies. Eventually, she left Spain for England, settling into a quieter life in London. She acquired a cozy home, withdrew from the glare of the tabloids, and began living on her own terms. That doesn't mean she stopped working. She took roles, albeit smaller ones, through the 1960s, such as in The Bible, 1968. But the big, star-driven vehicles of earlier times were no longer her domain. Her health, challenged by heavy smoking, drinking, and a generally carefree approach to well-being, began to deteriorate. In the late 1970s, she took on parts like Miss Logan in The Sentinel, 1977, and Beth Richards in The Kidnapping of the President, 1980. There were also stints in television, notably 5 episodes of Knots Landing, giving audiences glimpses of Ava's longtime magnetism, though now touched by age and vulnerability. That said, she never lost that sparkle. Despite physical setbacks, she maintained the sharp wit, the smoky chuckle, and an enduring beauty that time couldn't fully erase. Still, the unstoppable force of aging kept creeping in. 2 strokes impaired her mobility, slowing her down and making life in London more of a quiet retreat than a bustling social scene. In her final years, she poured her remaining energy into completing her autobiography, Ava, My Story. She faced the pages candidly, recounting the passions, pains, and missteps that led her from a tobacco farm in North Carolina to the top of Hollywood. Sadly, she passed away on January 25, 1990, before she could see the finished book in print. The cause was pneumonia, and she was 67 years old, leaving behind a galaxy of film performances and a legend of heartbreak and triumph that fans still discuss today. Her body was returned to Smithfield, North Carolina, where she was buried in the Gardner family plot, close to her roots. The town now houses the Ava Gardner Museum, a place for devotees to glimpse the dresses, photographs, and mementos of a life both stormy and glorious. If there's any one takeaway from Ava Gardner's saga, it might be this: she was never just a pretty face. Yes, her physical appearance was extraordinary. Her photos can still leave viewers speechless. But beneath that aesthetic splendor was a restless, fiery soul, one that yearned for excitement, love, artistic expression, and a sense of freedom beyond conventional norms. She openly took part in relationships that defied moralistic scorn and never pretended to be a saint. Her honesty about who she was and what she wanted often put her at odds with the conservative climate of mid-20th century Hollywood, yet it also made her revered by fans who sensed her sincerity. Early on, critics might have dismissed her as a starlet who relied on beauty. But by the time she delivered compelling performances in movies like The Killers, Mogambo, and The Night of the Iguana, it was clear that she had cultivated a formidable screen presence. Directors valued her ability to conjure potent chemistry with co-stars. Gregory Peck, who worked with her multiple times, once lauded her natural instincts, praising how she could hold her own in intense scenes with minimal rehearsals. John Huston, a friend and collaborator, found her complex, sometimes maddening, but always rewarding as a performer. The same rebelliousness that propelled her overseas, that entangled her in high-profile affairs, that made her choose roles that might tarnish her good girl image also took a toll on her personal well-being. Drink and heartbreak shadowed her life. While some of her colleagues settled into domestic routines, Ava was traveling the world, rolling the dice on love and never truly finding stability. Even after her star power started to wane, she continued to roam. She once said that she felt safer in countries where people didn't judge her so harshly for her choices, where the paparazzi were less invasive. Spain and England became havens for her unorthodox spirit. It's worth noting that in 1986, she shot a final made-for-television film called Harem. Even in her advanced years dealing with ill health, she managed to appear in this project, demonstrating that her passion for performing still burned. By then, the lines in her face told many tales of restless nights, boisterous parties, and tearful confessions. But if you look closely at that performance, you can still detect an echo of that once mighty sparkle. Age hadn't robbed her of her essence, just slowed it, softened it. She also appeared briefly on the soap opera Knots Landing, a testament to how her star power could still draw eyes, even in the smaller scope of television. Audiences might have been surprised to see the iconic star of The Killers or Showboat in such a modern setting. But that was Ava, unpredictable, always surprising. Fans often speculate about how she'd fare if she were a star in today's Hollywood. Would social media fit her rebellious nature, or would she recoil from the 24/7 gossip cycle? In her lifetime, reporters and tabloids already hounded her relentlessly. She might have found the internet's round-the-clock scrutiny suffocating, yet there's a certain raw authenticity to her brand of stardom that many of today's celebrities might envy. She didn't cultivate a squeaky clean persona. She was who she was, flaws and all, and the public, for the most part, embraced her for it. She was a rare combination of Southern grace and irreverent spontaneity, crossing boundaries, even as she soared in popularity. Ava Gardner's life was a mix of glamour, talent, and personal struggles, but her legacy endures as one of Hollywood's most iconic stars. Her passion for living boldly and her unforgettable performances continue to inspire generations. Though her life ended too soon, Ava's memory lives on through her films and the Ava Gardner Museum, a tribute to her incredible career. If you enjoyed this tribute, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories about Hollywood's greatest legends. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.